Walter's Sports Bar is a great place for the family to grab a bite to eat before going into the ballpark. $5 kids meals from 4 to 7 p.m. with the purchase of an adult meal. Walter's is located across the street from Nationals Park.
Feel your best and amplify your everyday look with Thrive Causemetics. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/shine26 for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/shine26.
Infield in for the Giants with a runner at third. And now the pitch. Swing and a long drive, deep left field, down the line, toward the corner, going, gone, goodbye! Bang, zoom goes Curtis Mead with his second home run. It's a 2-run shot. It's now the Nationals 3 and the Giants nothing. 2-1. Alvarez coming set already. Kicks and fires a pitch. Swinging a ground ball toward short. Abrams has it cleanly. He sets and he throws across to Mead. And a Curly W's in the books. The Nationals salvage the final game of this 3-game series. And 3 pitchers combined to shut out the Giants. The pitching staff's first shutout of the season. A Curly W's in the books. The final score, the Washington Nationals 3. The San Francisco Giants, nothing.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark is at Nationals Park, where the Nats at last have won their second home game in MLB's 2026 regular season. A 3-0 win over the San Francisco Giants at Nationals Park on Sunday afternoon to avoid a 3-game sweep as opener PJ Poulin, bulk pitcher Miles Mikolas, and reliever Andrew Alvarez combined for an 8-hit shutout with 9 strikeouts versus 1 walk, just as everyone expected. The Nats now are 10-12, 8-5 on the road versus 2-7 at home. This installment of Nats Chat is brought to us by the great Mason Kalfas. He's the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since our first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. Do not look now, but the Nats and Miami Marlins are tied for second place in the National League East. Each team is 10-12. Now, yes, the NL East has been easily the worst division in the majors so far, but let's not talk about that. The Nats are tied for second place. But in the meantime, Mark, how about this game on Sunday afternoon? Of all of the wild and crazy and high-scoring games for the Nats so far, we got like a palate cleanser, a restoration of sanity, a return to normalcy, a nice and tidy 3-0 win. And again, Poulin, Mikolas, and Alvarez, the 3 Nats pitchers combining on this 8-hit shutout.
Well, I think all of us would have said if there's one pitching trio out there that is most likely to give you a nice, crisp, clean shutout victory in under 2.5 hours, it's obviously the Poulin, Mikolas, and Alvarez trio, right? I mean, they've gone with some unconventional pitching strategies so far this season. This probably was right up there with the best of them, and it turned out as perfectly as Blake Butera could have tried to draw this one up. It basically worked out exactly as you would have wanted. And credit to all 3 guys who did what they needed to do, especially Miles Mikolas, who hadn't come close to pitching this well so far this season. And especially to Andrew Alvarez, who was asleep on Saturday night in Rochester or wherever Rochester was playing. I think they're at home. Got the call, was on a 5 a.m. flight to D.C. He takes a flight to D.C., gets here, ends up pitching 4 1/3 innings of scoreless relief, and is the last guy on the mound as they're shaking hands at the end of a game. This is a guy who's been a starter throughout his minor league career. I asked him, do you remember the last time you were like on the mound at the end of a game? He thinks it was in Fredericksburg early on in his minor league career when he was pitching in relief for that particular game. Just a remarkable path that they took to get to this shutout victory, but props to all of them for getting the job done.
Well, as we have come to know, nothing with the Nats pitching is easy. Nothing is simple. Nothing is smooth. Nothing, it feels like, goes as planned. And then you get something like Sunday afternoon, and it just is so refreshing. It was so nice to see. It's got to feel so good for those guys. Got to feel good for manager Blake Butera, pitching coach Simon Matthews. Like, they drew this up, and it ended up working out so well. So we had the opener, PJ Poulin. He tossed 2/3 of a scoreless inning. He in the top of the first phase, 4 batters got 2 outs, although one of the batters reached base via a fielding error by third baseman Brady House. And then Miles Mikolas came into the game, right? Normally a starting pitcher, in this instance, a bulk pitcher. Second consecutive Miles Mikolas outing in which he serves as the bulk man. And he, for the first time for the Nats here in this regular season, pitched well. 4 scoreless innings, 4 swinging strikeouts, 1 walk, gave up 4 hits, all of which were singles, threw a lot of strikes, 61 pitches, 40 strikes, just 21 balls. Did commit a throwing error, but man, was it nice to see Mikolas do well. You asked Blake Butera during his postgame press conference about this.
To say every time you approach him, hey, I'm here to do whatever I can to help us win, just goes a long way.
And then I thought it was funny, the follow-up question, Butera got asked, so are you still going to do this with Mikolas, or might he actually be a normal starting pitcher again? And Butera in no way said, yeah, he'll be a normal starting pitcher again. Butera basically said, this is what we're doing with Miles because this is what we have to do with Miles. But what was done with Miles on Sunday afternoon worked.
Yeah, he paused before very carefully stating his words to answer that particular question. I think especially if you can count on getting anything like this, you would, of course, do it again. We've talked about how they're basically just trying to minimize the amount of time that he's out there and prevent him from facing the top of the lineup, more than once, maybe twice at most. And look, to his credit, he threw strikes, number one. So, I think he walked 1 batter, but putting the ball over the plate. He gave up 4 hits. They're all singles, and 3 of them never left the infield. So he wasn't just kind of like muddling his way through this by putting zeros on the board. I mean, he actually was pitching well, getting very weak contact. There really wasn't much at all along the way that you said, oh boy, he looks shaky here, or boy, they're really having good at bats against him. So props to him. He said he has been working on some things in between starts, or I guess in between bulk relief appearances. And I think you could tell the smile on his face. This was gratifying for him. I think he needed to actually see some positive results come out of all this. And I give him a lot of credit too. He's like the only guy in that clubhouse with any real track record in the big leagues. He could have taken this approach that they've said to him, like, look, we're not actually going to let you start. We're going to have you come in relief because, frankly, we don't trust you to face good left-handed hitters at the start of the game. He could have taken that the wrong way. It seems like he has embraced that idea. And as he told us, like, I'm happy to be pitching in the big leagues right now. I'm here to do whatever I can to help this team win, and that's ultimately all that matters. So I give him credit. There's a little bit of swallowing of pride here for him, for a guy who does have a track record and been in the big leagues for a while. I'm sure deep down he knows this is it. This is his last shot. If it doesn't work here, it's never going to happen anywhere else. But credit to him for, accepting and embracing what this role is, and then going out and actually applying what he was working on and making it, work and be successful in this game.
Yeah, I mean, as we have discussed, his last 3 seasons have been really bad, and I'm sure he's aware of that. Age 37 season, the market for him wasn't exactly robust. He ended up signing with the Nats a 1-year deal, reportedly for just $2.25 million, so he sees the writing on the wall. But it's good to know that there is this kind of buy-in with what the Nats are doing, because for this to work, you do need player buy-in, and so that we seemingly have the player buy-in is great, and it's a credit to the players. I think it's also a credit to the baseball ops for selling this properly and for communicating this properly, and I don't think we should minimize that. So good for Miles Mikolas. I was thinking about this before the game because it is kind of a weird deal, right? Like, what is the point of jumping through all these hoops for a guy who is in his age 37 season? You're a team that has restarted the rebuild. Like, why are you doing this? If you're going to jump through hoops for someone younger who you're developing and who maybe can serve you in the future. And I guess the team, doesn't necessarily believe it has many better options. Maybe the team does feel like there is something still there in Miles Mikolas to where he can be helpful to them. But I also wonder how much of this is the Nats trying to develop and cultivate their process, and that they actually see value in having to go about things in an unconventional way with a starting pitcher, because it sort of establishes to the rest of the team, this is how we're going to do things sometimes. And maybe it's helpful for Paul Taboni and Ani Kalambi and Blake Butera and Simon Matthews from a standpoint of, this is the right way to do this. Like, here's how we should be implementing an opener, and here's how we should be communicating to a struggling veteran pitcher how he's going to be a bulk guy, and here's how we should be handling roster transactions when we have a guy like this. I wonder how much of that might be part of why the team is sticking with Miles Mikolas.
It could be that. I think there's also a harsh reality here, which is it's not like there's somebody just banging on the door saying you need me instead. Now, we can talk about Andrew Alvarez, because I think there's an interesting question there now with him, maybe even more so than Mitchell Parker. But it's not like there is that obvious young starter who is supposed to be a big part of the future. Josiah Gray's healthy. I think it's a little different conversation than it would be with him hurt. So that may be part of it too. And as far as, the way they're using Mikolas, I'd be fascinated to know if deep down they do believe in the idea of using openers like this, or is this really just a reflection of what they have? And I think it may be more the latter. They would love to have 5 real quality starting pitchers that they could run out there for 6 innings every time and not even think about having to do these unconventional things. But they don't, and they recognize that, and credit to them, they have tried to come up with ways to get around that and just to maximize what you have with who you have. And this was a perfect example of that in this game. So yeah, I think they've handled it well. And I think it does set a good example for others on the team about how they could be asked to do similar things. And if Mikolas is handling it this way, then, they all should handle it that way. But I think deep down, they would much rather have a guy who they knew could give them 5-6 innings, no trouble, and not have to go through all these hoops, regardless of if he's a 37-year-old at the end of his career or a young guy who, they don't know what kind of future he has.
Yeah, I mean, the opener strategy came about out of necessity, not out of you wanted to do it, right? I mean, when the Rays pioneered this in 2018, it was because they felt like this was the best way to do their pitching. Absolutely. If you have 5 aces, you go out there and you throw those guys. Here's the other thing, too, that's standing out with what the Nats are doing from an opener standpoint. So when the Rays pioneered this in 2018, they did this with basically the same opener over and over again in Sergio Romo. The Nats so far have only used PJ Poulin as an opener. Should we view him as the designated opener, or do you think there are others who will act as openers as the season goes on?
I think he makes the most sense, at least right now. And what you're seeing is, they have a rotation with 4 right-handers and then 1 lefty in Foster Griffin. They have the luxury of having a good number of left-handers in their bullpen. They actually, at the moment, have 5 lefties in their bullpen. I think that's unprecedented. I don't think this team has ever had that many. I'm not even sure they've had 4 in the past, which they've had here for a little while now. So you can do this if a few conditions are in place. If the opposing team has good left-handed hitters near the top of their lineup, and you're starting a right-handed pitcher, so the idea would be, if this was the 7th inning, you'd be using one of your left-handed relievers to face those guys. You wouldn't want a right-hander facing them. So it starts with that. But it also is because they have other lefties they could hold on for later in the game. Cionel Perez maybe hasn't been dominant, but he is the number 1 lefty, so to speak, that you're going to use in, say, the 8th or the 9th inning against top left-handed hitters. So that gives them the luxury of being able to use Poulin in the 1st inning and still have somebody for later in the game. I think Poulin is also really a matchup lefty. I mean, under the old rules, he's probably the guy who's coming in to face 1-2 batters. Now he has to face 3 in the way it works now, but I think he kind of fits that style, more pitching from the side. It's a different look from him than, say, like a power lefty you wouldn't necessarily open with. So I think the conditions are right to do it where he is going to be primarily the guy. You mentioned how the Rays would use Sergio Romo, a right-hander. I don't think they really feel the need to do that because they only have 1 lefty starter, Foster Griffin, who I think they're comfortable with starting the game because he throws so many different pitches, and they're going to allow him to face a lineup twice or maybe even a 3rd time. So I think it's just the circumstances that allow for it. But if you find something that works, and Poulin has grown comfortable with this idea and knows what the preparation for it is and how he needs to warm up and get ready for that kind of appearance, you stick with it as long as it seems to be working.
Are you a law firm partner or associate stuck on an underperforming team while your competitors are passing you by? Is your law firm still living in 2019 and pretending everything is okay? Meanwhile, the whole firm is having the same bad luck as Josiah Gray is having. Unlike James Wood, you've got options, and you don't have to stay on a 60-win roster. Longtime Nats Chat sponsor Mason Kalfas is the best legal recruiter in the D.C. market. Mason and his team at Zenith Legal specialize in placing partners, associates, and senior government lawyers at top firms in Washington, D.C. and across the country. Mason and his team have placed attorneys at more than half of the AmLaw 100. And while you might be reading doom and gloom in the legal press, the reality is that many practices are red hot: antitrust, private equity, and real estate, among others. Plus, Zenith Legal has something that no other legal recruiting firm offers: a proprietary app that lets you track exactly where you've been submitted and helps Mason's team match you with the right opportunity faster and more precisely. Mason regularly works with senior lawyers from the DOJ, SEC, and law firms to help them level up, whether that means a better platform, stronger clients, or, let's be honest, a lot more money. Even in slow markets, Mason has helped attorneys dramatically increase their compensation. Call Mason today, 202-486-3535. That's 202-486-3535.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
Some days call for some oomph to amplify your everyday look. Like when you want the look of false lashes without the extra effort. Reach for Thrive Causemetics Liquid Lash Volumizer Mascara. Or when you want all eyes on your smile, keep Empower Gloss Ultra Glossy Lip Serum in your bag. It's a burst of 24-hour hydration that smooths like a serum, shines like a gloss, and can be worn sheer or layered. You'll also look and feel your best with Thrive Causemetics. Plus, every product is 100% vegan, cruelty-free, and made with clean, skin-loving ingredients that work with your skin, not against it. And for every product purchased, Thrive Causemetics donates to help communities thrive. So every time you use your favorite Thrive Causemetics product, you're helping communities you care about too. Amplify your everyday. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/shine26 for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/shine26.
Now the wind of the 1-2. Swinging a ground ball, softly hit left side. It goes through to Abrams, the shortstop. He fires on target to Mead at first to end the inning. 1-2-3 go the Giants. Alvarez has retired 6 in a row. And Arise, amazingly, is 0 for 4.
So the Nats pitcher in this game who threw the most innings was Andrew Alvarez. Miles Mikolas went 4 innings. Alvarez went 4 1/3 innings. And how about the work of Alvarez? 4 1/3 shutout innings, 5 strikeouts. It was on Sunday morning that the Nats announced having recalled Andrew Alvarez from AAA Rochester. The Nats took Alvarez in the 12th round of the 2021 MLB first-year player draft out of California Polytechnic State University. He was named the Nats 2023 Minor League Pitcher of the Year, and as you may recall, he was good for the Nats at the major league level last season, albeit in a limited sample size. But Alvarez, last regular season at the major league level, 5 games, all starts, ERA at 2.31, whip of 1.114, wins above replacement per Baseball Reference of 0.6. There were not many bright spots for the Nats last season, but Alvarez actually was one, albeit a small one, and we talked about Alvarez at the time, and here he was on Sunday afternoon, coming up and on short notice going out there and pitching really well. And you alluded to this earlier, but I think it's an obvious question. Why isn't this guy in the rotation? Or why isn't this guy being talked about more as someone who could be eating up innings for the Nats right now?
I think that's a conversation that Blake Butera and Simon Matthews and Paul Taboni and Ani Kalambi should be having right now. And maybe they are. I asked Butera kind of towards the end of his post-game press conference, like, what's next for Alvarez? He's been a starter. He's had some success here at the big league level. Obviously, he was successful today in this kind of role. You already have Mitchell Parker as a left-handed long man. You have Brad Lord as a right-handed long man. Like, what's next? And I would imagine they maybe went into this just intending to bring Alvarez up for the day or two. He was the insurance policy, as, you know, all these relievers they've had to use. Well, let's get somebody in here who can give us length. Well, he did that and he was successful. But, you know, I know Alvarez doesn't have the pedigree that a lot of their other younger starters have. What was it, 12th round pick? Doesn't have overpowering stuff. He just kind of slowly rose through the organization. But we have to acknowledge that he's had success in the minor leagues and now in the big leagues. And yeah, it's not enough of a sample to really have a sense if that's sustainable or not. But sometimes the guys who don't look like the blue chip prospects, who don't have the stuff that wows you, sometimes they turn out and have like good, solid careers. And it's not a perfect comparison, but I think back to a guy like John Lannon years ago, I think he was an 11th or 12th round pick in their first draft in 2005. He didn't overwhelm you, but he got his chance to pitch in the big leagues, and he proved himself to be a quality big league pitcher for several years for them. Maybe Andrew Alvarez can be that kind of guy. And so at some point, you just say, let's find out. And maybe it's more worth it from a developmental standpoint to throw him out there instead of a Mikolas and see maybe this can stick. Maybe there is something there. Another good sign about him, he's raised his strikeout rate at AAA this year. That's among the reasons they called him up. He's never been a big strikeout guy. He's got a way more strikeouts than innings pitched. And then you kind of saw that in this game. Some good stuff, some good swings and misses from him. So he may even be improving beyond what we had already seen from him in the past. All I know is from what I've seen from him last September and now in this game, this is a guy that I think to myself, I should be seeing more of him. This guy should be pitching in the big leagues more. Maybe it will prove to be that he's not a big league pitcher, but so far he's had more success at this level than several others that they are putting out there on a more regular basis.
I mean, what do you have to lose, right? Like, what exactly are you sacrificing if this doesn't work out? I think we all would love to see more of Andrew Alvarez. And, he seems to have this like California cool about him. Top of the ninth on Sunday afternoon, he gives up a leadoff double to Elliot Ramos. And you say to yourself, all right, the Nats are only up 3-0. Maybe Alvarez is starting to get gassed. The Nats did not have anyone warming up in the bullpen. Like this was Alvarez's game, but maybe it ends up not being Alvarez's game. And then what does he do? He induces 3 consecutive outs, ball game over. Like doesn't panic, handles things properly, and ends up having a really nice outing. It's a funny deal if you look at Nats relief pitching in this series, and I know it didn't always feel this way, but if you go by the outings from relievers in each of the 3 games in this series, and what we'll do is we'll call the only quote-unquote relief outing on Sunday afternoon Alvarez. I won't even include Miles Mikolas, although technically I could. Game 1, 3 relievers combined to allow 2 runs in 5 innings. Game 2, 4 relievers combined to allow 4 runs, 3 earned in 8 innings. And then Game 3, we had what we had from Andrew Alvarez, 4 1/3 shutout innings. This actually was a good series from the Nats from a relief pitching standpoint. Disappointing series in terms of starting pitching when you look at Zach Littell and Cade Cavalli, but the relief pitching actually was pretty good in this series.
Yeah, and again, it may be unconventional how they do it. And, they are asking for some long relief here, but their long relievers have done a pretty good job. Brad Lord, Mitchell Parker here, Andrew Alvarez doing it. You put guys in spots and you try to get what you can out of them. And I think at this point, as we've discussed, nobody should be assured of anything yet. At one point, they finally had Clayton Beeter start to warm up there in the 9th. Maybe it was after the double that began the inning. And I understand you do that because Alvarez may be running out of gas and you get to a point you're like, all right, we need to do this. There's no guarantee that Clayton Beeter is going to come in and shut the door for you. He hasn't proven that he's better than that. And I'm sure in the back of his mind, Blake Butera is thinking that and saying, Andrew Alvarez is a starter. He's not gassed at this point. He threw 86 pitches, I think, 5 days ago for Rochester. Let's just leave him out there and let him try to work through this. And he did. And I think you have to, and as I say this, they just announced they've optioned him back to AAA Rochester. So there you go. It really was just a one-day thing. That's unfortunate. So you had now in the last week, Orlando Ribalta optioned after getting his first career save, and now Andrew Alvarez being optioned after a fantastic relief performance and getting the win in this one. There you go.
That is not going to be a well-received transaction at all. And we know that this is how the Nats have been operating lately with, one bullpen move after another. That is surprising, though. I wonder what the thinking is behind that. Why wouldn't you just kind of see where this goes with Andrew Alvarez? I don't know what the harm in that would be.
I guess the thought would be, maybe it's almost more of a compliment than not, because you're saying we'd rather have him starting every 5 days at AAA, and we're not ready to make a move in the rotation. And I suppose you say, Mikolas was good in this one, so you're not going to get rid of him now. Maybe you could argue sending him back there to pitch every 5 days as a starter is better than keeping him up here. I mean, they don't really need that many left-handed long relievers up here. I think if you keep him up here, it would be to pitch in bigger chunks. Now, you could maybe send Mitchell Parker back, would be the alternative. But yeah, it's unfortunate we just found that out now. I guess we'll have to ask Blake Butera on Monday. But my guess is, at least the way they'll frame that, is we needed a fresh arm for this game. He did a great job of it. Let's let him go back and stay in that starter's routine and show us that he's ready to maybe be a big league starter.
So just so people know, we usually tape episodes of the podcast like an hour or so after the ends of games. And the Nats under Paul Taboni here have had this penchant for announcing roster transactions right around the time that we're taping. And we got some breaking news here on this installment of the podcast. Al Galdi here to tell you about Window Nation's The More You Buy, The More You Save sale. But before that, the Window Nation look into the future.
Schumann pumps it in there. Piñango pokes a fly ball to shallow center. Hassel sprints in, slides, and he caught it. Heck of a play by Robert Hassel III in center field.
Well, happy spring. Window Nation is ready for spring, and Window Nation wants Nats Chat podcast listeners to know that there's no better time to upgrade your home with great Window Nation windows than right now, as Window Nation is offering to Nats Chat podcast listeners the More You Buy, The More You Save sale. Save up to 50%. Get your windows with 0% interest for 5 years. During uncertain times, one of the best investments that you can make is investing in your home. So visit windownation.com now to book a consultation and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you. That's windownation.com and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
Some days you just want to amplify your everyday look. Like when you want the look of false lashes without the extra effort, reach for Thrive Cosmetics Liquid Lash Volumizer Mascara. Or when you want all eyes on your smile, keep Empower Gloss Ultra Glossy Lip Serum in your bag. It's a burst of 24-hour hydration that smooths like a serum, shines like a gloss, and can be worn sheer or layered. You'll always look and feel your best with Thrive Cosmetics. Plus, every product is 100% vegan, cruelty-free, and made with clean, skin-loving ingredients that work with your skin, not against it. Amplify your everyday. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/shine26 for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/shine26.
Baseball fans know every pitch can change a game. Playoff hockey is just as intense. Every shift, every second matters. NHL on TNT has the best coverage, with stars like Paul Bissonnette bringing laughs and Wayne Gretzky breaking down the action. The studio crew makes every game feel bigger, just like a big Nationals win. Playoff hockey is unpredictable, physical, and full of overtime drama. If you love sports, you'll love the energy. Watch the Stanley Cup playoffs on TNT, TBS, TrueTV, and HBO Max. Coverage begins April 19th.
Now the set. And Ruiz swings and drives it in the air to left center field deep. Ramos going back, way back, diving, and he can't hold on to it. Nunez was at the bag at second. He rounds third. He's going to try to score. Throw to the plate, and Nunez. Oh, the ball is not held by the catcher, Bailey. Nunez had nowhere to go, but he scores. And the Nationals lead 1-0.
All right, so it's a funny deal with the Nats offense in this series. The worst of the three games was the lone game that the Nats won. The Nats offense in this 3-0 win over the Giants on Sunday afternoon, really not that good. 3 runs, 7 hits, 1 walk. Now, 3 of the 7 hits were extra base hits as the Nats had a home run, 2 doubles, and 4 singles. The Nats went 2 for 8 with runners in scoring position. Curtis Mead, he atoned, at least somewhat, for his base running blunder in Game 2 of this series. He has the Nats starting first baseman and number 2 batter, 1 for 4 with a 2-run homer. Mead in the Nats 3-run 5th inning, a 1-out first pitch, 2-run homer to left field for a 3-0 Nats lead. So good to see that. Also, Keibert Ruiz, he had a multi-hit game. He is the Nats starting catcher and number 9 batter, 2 for 3 with an RBI double and an infield single. Now, the RBI double was quite the adventure. So Ruiz in that Nats 3-run 5th, a full count RBI double to left center field to put the Nats up 1-0. The Giants left fielder Elliot Ramos failed in his attempt at a diving catch. Nasim Nunez scored standing up, but he scored despite the ball beating him to home plate. The Giants catcher Patrick Bailey failed to make the catch, and Nunez essentially danced his way to stepping on home plate to score the run.
The ball beat Nunez, and Bailey, if he catches it, Nunez was going to try and dance around him to get to the plate. Instead, Bailey never held the ball.
So nearly another base running blunder for the Nats right there, but thankfully we did not get that. But also, Ruiz himself earlier in the game was guilty of a base running blunder. Bottom of the third, leadoff infield single to the left side of the infield, but he got thrown out in breaking back towards second base and then being slow to advance to third base on a pop-up by Curtis Mead to no man's land in left center field for the second out on what was officially a fielder's choice and not a single. So the base running sloppiness continues to pop up, but good to see Mead homer. Good to see Ruiz have a 2-hit game. It was not a dynamic offensive performance, but with the combined 8-hit shutout from Nats pitching, this did not need to be a dynamic offensive performance.
No, they finally, for the first time, didn't need their offense to carry the load, which was a nice, I suppose. Yeah, let's not make this out to be some kind of really well-played game by them, because there were still mistakes. That Ruiz base running mistake was a bad one. I understand you got to hold up at second base to see if the ball's caught, but once it was, he initially broke backwards after the ball clearly touches the ground, and that's what cost him entirely to be thrown out, forced out at third base, which, a play you just don't see very often. And then the play at the plate, I actually think that was more of just a bad send by Victor Estevez. I know Nasim Nunez is really fast, but he had to hold up to see if the ball was going to be caught or not. When it wasn't, he turned it on. Estevez started waving him around. I feel like the left fielder had the ball as Nunez was rounding third. And so that's a tough throw to beat. Now, the lack of sliding, well, I think what happens is he sees Patrick Bailey, who he thinks has the ball, and he's standing up and he's like completely blocking his path to the plate, which he's entitled to if he has the ball or is in the process of receiving the ball. And Nunez is like, well, I'm not going to be able to slide around him in any way. So he sort of just like slowed down and braced for impact, essentially. The ball comes loose, and now he's like, oh, wait, I could be safe, and he managed to step on the plate. It was an ugly play, not the way you draw that up at all, but I think that was probably a dangerous send by Estevez and more of an indictment of the Giants than anything that Nunez necessarily did wrong. Thankfully, he scores the run, and then Mead, who had the bad game the day before, delivers a big clutch hit. He needed that one to kind of make up for what he did on Saturday.
Well, Nasim Nunez needs to brace himself big time for any potential collision because, as we know, he's not exactly Josh Bell in terms of bulk. What I do wonder is this. Is it possible that the extreme speed of Nunez disrupted the thought process of Bailey to where Bailey had a hard time catching the throw? And so maybe Nunez, in an odd way, induced the miscatch by Bailey to where Nunez was able to score.
Yeah, it could be. If in the back of your mind, hey, this is a guy who is so fast and elusive. I, need to make sure I get the tag down, and he doesn't even have the ball yet. That could be. And I'm sure Estevez, in his decision to send him, he's probably not doing that with anybody else on the team. Maybe Jacob Young. So Nunez's speed actually allowed for that scenario to even play out in the first place. And it is why you will say sometimes, go for it. Put the pressure on the defense to make the play. In this case, the Giants defense did not make the play, and the Nats benefited from it.
By the way, if you're on X, make sure that you are following or at least reading Nationals Communications at Nationals Comms, COMMS. That's where the Nats announce a lot of their official roster transactions. The responses to the Nats announcing having optioned Andrew Alvarez to AAA Rochester, or shall we say entertaining, and I will leave it at that. We offer shout-outs on the Nats Chat podcast. If you would like for us to conduct a shout-out to someone who you care about, email the great Tim Shovers, the man who runs his podcast, Nats Chat Podcast @gmail.com. Nick Belcher wants to shout out his friend Aubrey, who turned him on to Nats Chat. Way to go, Aubrey. Nick also wants to shout out his son, Logan, who is 6 years old and is learning what it means to really be a sports fan. Logan started the season with tears when the Mackenzie Gore trade happened, is through the roof on how his favorite player C.J. Abrams is playing, and is struggling to grasp what may happen when the bullpen comes into the game. We're all struggling to grasp that, Logan. You're not alone. But Logan will learn that the Nats can't win every game, but at least he is hopefully getting ready to see the upswing. Plus, Logan crushed it in his first baseball game of the season on Saturday for Team 6-7. Like the kids say, 6-7. And I have an 8-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter, and at least 12 times a day I hear that 6-7. So there you go.
Thankfully, my 14-year-old son is beyond that. When I brought it up last year when it became a thing, he just rolled his eyes at me and said, "Dad, that's not funny at all." But Logan, way to go, both on the field, but also I love that kind of dedicated fandom at such a young age. That's how you learn to be a real baseball fan. You live and die with the team on a daily basis. I remember as a little kid, being crushed when one of my favorite players was traded and then wound up becoming a fan of whoever they got in return. Living and dying every day with a team, it's such a unique experience in baseball that you don't get in other sports. And so I'm so glad to see someone at Logan's age already learning what that's like. It's going to make it when they do finally win something big, Logan, when this team makes it back to the playoffs or even perhaps the World Series someday, you're going to appreciate it even more because you started out at this point of the process. And at this age, it's going to mean a lot more to you when it does happen.
Well, as a child of the 1980s and early 1990s of the Washington, D.C. area, I grew up as an Orioles fan. We did not have an MLB team in D.C., and I was crushed when the Orioles in 1988 traded starting pitcher Mike Boddicker. So, Logan, I can feel your pain. I understand where you're coming from, but it sounds like you're also experiencing some very good things. You know what's funny with the 6'7" thing is when it first came out, and my kids are saying it, I'm like, oh my God, what does this mean, right? Because these days, who knows, right? Where kids are getting stuff from, what stuff means. And the fact that it means nothing is, I think, the best part. Like, it doesn't mean anything. And I guess that's the humor in it, is that, people act like it means something. It doesn't mean anything. But yeah, when you see people saying stuff and it's a big deal on social media and your kids are saying it, you're like, oh my God, like, what does this happen to stand for? But thankfully, nothing bad. So we're okay.
I've tried my best to understand what this next young generation is learning about the world and the way they approach it. It's a very different way than we all grew up with social media, with YouTube, with iPads and phones and everything they have. Good luck to all the other parents out there navigating your way through it. It's changed a lot over the years, but I know you have. I hopefully have myself, and I know Logan and his family are doing it the right way. Make sure baseball is a part of the equation and everything will be fine in the end.
Well, next up for the Nats is a 4-game series against the Atlanta Braves at Nationals Park. The Nats have listed the following starting pitchers as probables for the series. Game 1, Monday evening, 6:45, Jake Irvin. Game 2, Tuesday evening, 6:45, Foster Griffin. Game 3, Wednesday evening, 6:45, Zach Littell. And Game 4, Thursday afternoon at 1:05, Cade Cavalli. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Mason Kalfas. He is the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since our first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. You could always reach us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Now the pitch. Waving, swing and a miss, struck him out, you guessed it, with the curveball, and the inning is over. What a job by Andrew Alvarez. 2 on and not out. He gets a double play and gets his 4th strikeout to end the inning.
From lashes for days with the viral Liquid Lash Extensions mascara to awakening your eyes with lift and color from the Brilliant Eye Brightener, Thrive Causemetics is the go-to when you want to amplify your everyday look. Plus, every product is 100% vegan, cruelty-free, and made with clean, skin-loving ingredients that work with your skin. And for every product purchased, Thrive Causemetics donates to help communities thrive. So every time you use your favorite Thrive Causemetics product, you're helping communities you care about too. Amplify your everyday. Go to thrivecausemetics.com/shine26 for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Causemetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/shine26.